great to be here. My name is Hayley Peltz, and I am the campus recruiter for CBiz. I've been working at CBiz for about a year and a half now. I currently sit out of our Los Angeles office, and I support all of our California locations. And so, if you also spot my cat in the background, she might make a little appearance. But what I wanted to talk to you today was about just the recruiting cycle, what it looks like now, what can we expect for this kind of unprecedented year that we're having. Well, I guess before we get started, I did just want to note that many people get into their accounting firms in many different avenues. There's not one correct way to do it, but I would say if you're looking for an internship or if you're looking for an entry-level position, the most common traditional way is typically through the campus recruiting cycle. You're in college, you attend events, and it's typically a very in-person, highly interactive process. And so what that really looks like is you might have different events like a career fair, like a meet the firms, where many different firms historically have just been in a room. You get to walk one by one, meet each firm, and it's a very quick and efficient way to meet other firms and to see if you can make a great impression and if you can make a great impression on the firms. There's other touch points, there's other presentations, info sessions. In general, the traditional non-COVID year has traditionally been a very in-person process where you do have those many different touch points with firms. So when we're looking at the pandemic, on the university end, schools responded very differently. So some schools are now fully virtual for the fall recruiting cycle. Other schools may be taking a hybrid approach where a certain percentage are in person and a certain percentage are online. Some are still in person. It really depends. It's going to vary wherever you are in the country. But for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to focus more on the kind of fully virtual. And I would say, despite the school status, most events are now fully virtual across the country, with some exceptions. So on the firm side, there were different firm trends and how firms responded to the pandemic. Some firms immediately went into a hiring freeze, and they still might be in a hiring freeze as well. There were maybe budget restrictions. Many firms had to delay hires. Maybe they canceled their internship. Some maybe had to rescind offers, like their full-time offers. Some had to do layoffs. Others might had to, maybe they kept their internships, but they had to onboard them virtually and create a virtual internship. Some might not be realistically looking for as many hires this fall. And there is going to be more of an emphasis on fall virtual recruiting versus the in-person. And so both on the university side and the firm side, they did respond in different ways. But the common piece with that is we are now going towards this virtual recruiting cycle. One of the biggest concerns is going to be that connection piece. It's a lot easier to talk to someone in person and really understand who they are and make those connections versus, if you're just purely, typing an email or in some other virtual way. So inherently there is going to be a challenge with that. Other student concerns might be, it's a lot easier to kind of put yourself in front of, at a professional in front at a career fair in person. So how do you stand out in a virtual crowd when everyone is also in the same boat as you? You might also ask, what events should I go to? There's a lot out there, what firms I should be considering, especially if you've never gone through this campus recruiting cycle before. It's all new to you in general, and now you're adding this extra layer of difficulty. And there's also the concerns, are firms even hiring, and what does the interview process look like now that it's virtual? Firms also have concerns as well. Like I mentioned, there is a concern. We want to make sure that we make those meaningful connections with students, and we're finding, great talent that will join our firms, but we want to make sure you're finding the best fit as well, and where you can see yourself. How can we best promote our firm and get, students to understand our branding? When we're at career fairs, it's a little bit easier for, if you've never heard of a firm before, you kind of just walk by a table, we kind of invite you over, hey, want to chat for a second? Have you heard of us? So it's a little bit easier to make those connections in person, but when we're online, it's a little bit more of an effort to promote ourselves and to get our name out there. We might be working on stricter budgets. We might be attending multiple schools, and each school has a different way to run their virtual events. So there's a lot of different concerns on the firm end as well. So when we're looking at what does our now virtual fall recruiting cycle going to look like, there's a couple different ways. So on the traditional university hosted event side, we still might host, the school still may host a career fair, like a Meet the Firms. It just might be hosted on an online virtual environment, whether it's on Handshake or maybe Zoom, maybe Microsoft Teams. Different schools have a different way of doing it. So there might be, you are in like one room all together and you're chatting, maybe there's breakout rooms, maybe you're scheduling one-on-one meetings. So each career fair is gonna look a little different depending on what school that you attend. And so I would definitely recommend contacting your career center just to make sure that you're aware of how the structure is for the career fair. There still might be other virtual events like virtual office hours, there might be presentations, so there's different opportunities, and I would definitely either connect with your career center or whether you're part of the Accounting Society, Alpha, any other student organization, they're going to have a list of events coming up as well. I would also say in addition to the school side, there's also the firm hosted events. So in the past, some firms may have hosted their own events, like in-person events. But I think if they hadn't in the past, I think there's going to be a trend with more firms hosting their own events. So whether that's panels, whether that's we host coffee chats, kind of like one-on-one chats outside the fair, whether it's our own kind of webinars or info sessions, there's definitely going to be more of a trend for firms to also host events. So the difficulty with that is there's a lot of options out there.